My manager smiled at me that Tuesday morning, the same way she'd smiled for 3 years. But this time, I knew what was coming next. And I was ready. You see, I'd finally found the evidence. The emails. The recordings. The paper trail that would expose everything she'd been doing to me, to others, to anyone who dared to challenge her little kingdom on the 4th floor of our corporate tower. But let me back up. Because this story, it's not just about workplace harassment. It's about how someone can systematically destroy your confidence, your reputation, your entire sense of self-worth, all while maintaining that perfect professional smile. My name is Sarah, and I'm 42 years old. I work in marketing for a mid-sized company in Denver. Worked, actually. Past tense. Because what happened next changed everything. It started innocently enough. 3 years ago, when I first joined the team, Jennifer seemed like the perfect boss. She was polished, articulate, always knew exactly what to say in meetings. She had this way of making you feel special, chosen, like you were part of her inner circle. The first red flag? She'd pull me aside after team meetings and whisper little comments about my colleagues. Did you notice how defensive Mark got when I asked about the quarterly numbers? Or, I'm concerned about Lisa's commitment to the project. She seems distracted lately. At first, I thought she was just being observant. Maybe even protective of the team. But slowly, I started to realize these weren't observations. They were tests. She was seeing if I'd agree, if I'd join in, if I'd become part of her system. Because that's what it was. A system. A carefully constructed web of manipulation that she'd perfected over years. The real nightmare began about 18 months ago. I'd been promoted to senior marketing specialist, and suddenly, Jennifer's attitude toward me shifted. The warm smiles became cooler. The praise stopped. And the criticism. God, the criticism never stopped. She'd call me into her office for what she called coaching sessions. These weren't about improving my work. They were about tearing me down, piece by piece, until I questioned everything I thought I knew about myself. Sarah, I'm concerned about your attention to detail, she'd say, sliding a report across her desk. There are several formatting issues here that really reflect poorly on our department. I'd look at the document, scanning for errors, finding nothing. I'm sorry, Jennifer, but I'm not seeing what you're referring to. Her expression would shift, just slightly. A tiny tightening around her eyes. Well, that's exactly the problem, isn't it? You're not seeing it. Maybe you need to slow down, take more time with your work. This happened weekly. Sometimes daily. She'd find fault with everything I did, but her criticism was always vague, always subjective, always impossible to pin down or defend against. The worst part? She was incredibly smart about it. She never yelled. Never used profanity. Never did anything that would be obviously inappropriate if someone else was listening. She was a master of plausible deniability. But the damage was real. I started second-guessing every email I sent, every presentation I gave, every decision I made. I'd stay late, going over my work again and again, trying to make it perfect, trying to anticipate what she might find wrong. My confidence, which had always been one of my strongest assets, began to crumble. I stopped speaking up in meetings. I avoided taking on new projects. I became a shadow of myself. And Jennifer? She watched it all with that same professional smile. The isolation was perhaps the cruelest part. She had this way of making other team members feel like they were her favorites, her trusted allies. She'd praise them publicly while undermining me privately. She'd assign them the high-visibility projects while giving me busy work that led nowhere. Slowly, I found myself on the outside of my own team. Colleagues who had once invited me to lunch stopped including me. The informal conversations that happen naturally in any workplace began to exclude me. I wasn't just being harassed by my manager. I was being systematically erased from my professional community. The breaking point came 6 months ago. I'd been working on a major campaign for our biggest client. I'd spent weeks on the strategy, the creative concepts, the execution plan. It was good work. Really good. The kind of work that gets noticed, that gets rewarded. The day before the client presentation, Jennifer called me into her office. "Sarah, I've been reviewing your campaign proposal, and I'm not comfortable presenting it to the client." My heart sank. "What's wrong with it?" It's not quite there yet. The messaging feels unfocused. The creative direction is too risky. I think we need to go in a different direction." She handed me a folder. Inside was a completely different campaign. One that looked suspiciously similar to ideas I'd mentioned in casual conversation weeks earlier. "Lisa put this together," Jennifer said. "I think it's more aligned with what the client is looking for." Lisa. The same Lisa who Jennifer had been concerned about months earlier. The same Lisa who had somehow transformed from problematic employee to rising star in record time. I stared at the proposal, recognizing my own concepts repackaged and presented under someone else's name. But I couldn't prove it. I'd never put those early ideas in writing. They'd been brainstorming sessions, casual conversations, the kind of collaborative thinking that happens naturally in creative work. "Jennifer, some of these concepts, they're very similar to ideas I shared with the team earlier." Her expression didn't change. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Lisa developed this independently." "Are you suggesting she copied your work?" The way she said it, with that slight note of surprise, of disappointment, made me sound petty. Paranoid. Like I was making accusations I couldn't support. "No, I just think there might have been some overlap in our thinking." "Well, that happens sometimes. Great minds think alike, right?" She smiled. That same professional smile. "I'm sure you understand that we need to move forward with the strongest possible presentation." I left her office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. But it wasn't just the stolen ideas. It was the way she'd made me feel crazy for even mentioning it. The way she'd turned my legitimate concern into evidence of my own instability. That night, I went home and cried for the first time in months. Not just tears of frustration, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere I didn't even know existed. But something else happened that night. Something that would change everything. I started documenting. Every interaction. Every email. Every coaching session. Every time she moved the goalposts or changed the rules or found fault with work that had been praised the day before. I created a detailed timeline of her behavior, cross-referenced with my performance reviews, my project assignments, my email communications. I researched workplace harassment laws. I read case studies. I learned about psychological manipulation tactics. And slowly, a pattern emerged. What Jennifer was doing wasn't random. It wasn't personal. It was systematic. It was intentional. And it was part of a larger pattern of behavior that had been going on for years. I started reaching out to former employees. People who had left the company under mysterious circumstances. People who had been let go for performance issues that seemed to come out of nowhere. The stories I heard were chilling. Jennifer had been doing this for years. She'd perfected the art of psychological warfare, of breaking people down until they either quit or got terminated. And she was protected by a company culture that valued her results over her methods. But I wasn't the person she thought I was. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to let her destroy me the way she'd destroyed others. I started recording our conversations. Not legally admissible, but useful for my own sanity, for reminding myself that I wasn't imagining things, that her behavior was real and documented. I saved every email, every text message, every written communication. I created backup copies of everything on my personal devices. And I waited. The opportunity came 3 weeks ago. Jennifer made a mistake. A big one. She sent me an email that was clearly meant for someone else. An email that contained explicit instructions about how to document performance issues that would justify my termination. An email that laid out a timeline for pushing me out of the company. But more than that, it contained references to previous employees. Names. Dates. Specific tactics that had been used to force people out. It was the smoking gun I'd been waiting for. I immediately forwarded the email to my personal account. Then I printed multiple copies and stored them in different locations. I documented the date and time I received it, the circumstances, everything that might be relevant. But I didn't act immediately. I waited. I let Jennifer proceed with her plan, documenting every step, every escalation, every attempt to build a case against me. And that brings us back to Tuesday morning. To Jennifer's smile. To the moment when everything changed. She called me into her office at 9 a.m. sharp. The same ritual we'd been through dozens of times before. But this time, I was ready. "Sarah, I need to discuss some concerns about your recent performance." I nodded, my phone recording in my pocket, my documentation folder in my bag. "I've been reviewing your work on the Morrison account, and I'm afraid there are some serious issues that we need to address." She pulled out a folder, thick with papers. A formal performance improvement plan. The first step in the termination process. "I'm concerned about your attention to detail, your ability to meet deadlines, your collaboration with team members. These are fundamental skills for someone in your position." I listened to her recite the same vague criticisms she'd been using for months. But this time, instead of feeling defensive, I felt calm. Almost peaceful. "Jennifer," I said, when she finished. "I appreciate your feedback. But before we proceed, I think there's something you should know." Her expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. A moment of uncertainty. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Much thicker than hers. "I've been documenting our interactions for the past 6 months. Every email, every conversation, every meeting. I have recordings, witness statements, and communication records going back to the beginning of our working relationship." The color drained from her face. "I also have communications that were sent to me by mistake. Communications that outline a systematic pattern of harassment and manipulation targeting not just me, but multiple employees over several years." I opened the folder and pulled out the email she'd sent me 3 weeks earlier. The one with the explicit instructions for documenting my termination. This email, for example, was sent to me instead of whoever you intended to receive it. It provides a detailed roadmap for the harassment campaign you've been conducting. Jennifer's professional composure cracked. For the first time in 3 years, I saw her as she really was. Not a confident executive, but a frightened person who had been caught in the act. "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No," I said, cutting her off. "There's been no misunderstanding. There's been a systematic campaign of workplace harassment, and I have evidence of it." I stood up, leaving the folder on her desk. "I've already spoken with an employment attorney. I've filed a complaint with HR. And I've been in contact with several former employees who have similar experiences." The silence in the room was deafening. "You have a choice, Jennifer. We can resolve this quietly and professionally, or we can let it play out publicly. But either way, this stops today." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Jennifer? That performance improvement plan? You can keep it. I don't think you'll be needing it." The aftermath was swift and decisive. Jennifer was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. The company launched a full investigation. 3 other employees came forward with their own stories of harassment and manipulation. Jennifer was terminated 2 weeks later. Quietly, without fanfare, but thoroughly and permanently. I won't lie and say it was easy. The legal process took months. The emotional recovery took even longer. There were moments when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing, whether I should have just found another job and moved on. But then I'd remember the faces of the people who had come forward. The relief in their voices when they realized they weren't alone, they weren't crazy, they weren't the problem. And I'd remember that Tuesday morning. The moment when I looked Jennifer in the eye and refused to be a victim anymore. Today, I work for a different company. I'm happier, more confident, more successful than I've ever been. But more importantly, I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. I know that I can stand up for myself and for others who might not have the resources or the courage to fight back. The workplace harassment epidemic is real. It's happening in offices across the country, in companies of all sizes, to people of all backgrounds. It's subtle, it's sophisticated, and it's devastating. But it's not unstoppable. When we document, when we speak up, when we support each other, we can fight back. We can create workplaces where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. If you're experiencing workplace harassment, know that you're not alone. Know that it's not your fault. Know that you have options, you have rights, and you have the strength to fight back. And if you know someone who might be going through this, be their ally. Listen to them. Believe them. Help them document what's happening. Sometimes, that support makes all the difference. Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life experiences that matter.